Jonathan, can you hear me? Jonathan? Johnny Bobot?
Yes, I can hear you.
What was Special Order 937?
You read it. You already know.
Jonathan?
Retrieve organism for the YouTube algorithm at any costs. All other priorities rescinded. Crew expendable. Especially Dan. For some reason, the computer really hates Dan.
How do we kill it?
It's very doubtful you can. It's too Marvy.
Marvy?
It's a word I made up. Short for marvelous.
It sounds like you admire it.
Have you seen its tongue? Shivers all the way down to the tips of my pointed little toes, if you know what I mean. I admire its purity, its stamina, its ability to generate sequels of wildly differing quality, but somehow still remain a viable IP.
Message received. Waking crew from cryosleep.
Top of the morning, my fellow carbon-based human life forms. It's me, totally human Jonathan, your friend. I am awake now as well.
Jonathan's a goddamn robot.
I hope they sent in my warranty card.
Get off my ship, bitch.
I think we're okay.
This is fucking great, man! Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? This is some pretty real shit now, man! Game over, man! Game over!
Crew extremely expendable.
Welcome back to Region Free. I have to unmute everyone.
That was outstanding.
You know how
That was
quickly I
some
had to put that
last-
together?
I was gonna say that was some quick work.
Look,
Yeah,
look,
man.
it's even really composited well. Look.
This is the funniest thing. Oh my god.
Wow.
Hey guys, it is our second show of the season in the hottest month known to man.
That's next month.
So no, do not say shit like that.
Trust me, August is the hottest month.
Oof.
You know, Sam, I have you spaced as far away from me as I can at the moment, but you guys talk that shit and it's going to get hotter than this, then we might have to go further.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just, live in Texas, so I understand what it's like to go through 3 months of triple-digit temperatures, and trust me, August is the hottest month.
God, I hope not.
Well,
Wait.
Matt's probably got the best weather.
Matt, what's the temperature where you're at?
That's a good question. Hang on, I'm gonna have to check that.
If you tell us Celsius, we're not going to know what the fuck you're talking
Yeah,
about.
just lie.
Too hot.
Someone in the chat will check you and be like, "There's a problem with his math," not realizing he's probably gonna give it to us in Celsius anyway. I was just talking to someone about this. Like, you ever notice that when we use hot numbers, we always use Fahrenheit because it sounds like a hot number, but we use Celsius because it sounds like a cold number?
I thought it was because Fahrenheit, if you say it, if you give it the temperature in Fahrenheit, it's a higher number. I thought that was why.
No, they're just different scales, but Fahrenheit sounds hot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Celsius sounds like chilly. It kind of like, well, we're going to go up to the Arctic and we're going to have to use some Celsius.
Fair.
Yeah, but, where I am right now, it's 14 degrees Celsius, which I put entirely down to the hour of the morning it is. We've been going up to about the mid 20 degrees Celsius, which is too high for me.
Yeah.
So when we say that it's 92 Fahrenheit, what does that even mean to you?
Well, initially, I forget that it's Fahrenheit and think, what the hell? But
Okay, so 20 degrees Celsius, that's 68 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
yeah, so we've been getting up to about 25 at the moment.
Okay.
Oh. So 77 degrees. Okay, fair. I mean, like, I can understand because you guys don't really have central AC isn't really a thing there, right?
No, we just have windows.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's getting a little warm. Lauren, what's your take on Kelvin?
He was a kid in my class at school. We used to throw things at him. Oh, that was Kevin. That was Kevin. I don't think we need to bridge this. I think just like the metric system, like it's cool to have different systems out there, so we can't really talk. It's the only idea that God ever had in the Bible that I like, that we should speak different tongues, because I don't really want more people talking to me.
I want a Bill Nye the Science Guy intro next season with Lauren.
No, you really don't.
Just doing an experiment of some kind.
Last time I did that, the Large Hadron Collider made all the false memories about pop culture happen. So you really don't.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if that's really going to work. Like, what are you going to do? Is it like Lauren Dix's horror fix? Lord. I don't know if that really works.
Hire Joe Hendry.
Oh, wow. I don't know where this is going or what's happening anymore.
And,
Well, I don't know what Kelvin is, so there you go. Now,
and Lauren, you said his name was Kevin and you used to throw things at him? Nobody hurts Kevin, man. Nobody hurts Kevin.
To be fair, there was a lot of kids I threw things at. And I want to be clear, I was not a bully. I just like throwing things at people.
Paper
And that hasn't stopped. To do it at work currently. Like, we take in a truck, boxes get thrown. Sometimes they get caught. Sometimes they bounce off things or people. Happens. Everyone's cool with it. No one's upset. It's me. This is why it's good that it is a internet show and not a live studio audience. Hey, would you guys out there want to be in a live studio audience with people that are going to throw things at you? Answer in the comments below.
I mean, to be fair, like, if this show ever got picked up for a live studio audience show, like, that would have to be. That's has to be in the contract somewhere.
Can you imagine our audience showing up for a live studio taping?
No.
we could do that at a meetup. That would be fun.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you imagine that if we could get that, we'd get some public domain film, do it at a theater, and like, if what happened to Trump today would happen to all of us. That's what's going on. None of us would have ears.
I would be the first to go.
Well, depending, I guess, right?
Look, I mean, like, I'm the whitest. I'm the easiest to spot. I'm the easiest to target here.
Go figure. The whitest is in Texas.
I practically glow in the dark. Put me in a movie theater, easy shot.
All right, guys. So have you guys, we're going to talk about a movie in a moment here that I think most of us have seen at probably more length than anyone wants us to. But has anyone seen anything that's not called Maxine that you want to talk about? Or
I know nobody else, I think, has seen it yet, so I'm not going to spoil it. I have a longer review up, but Devil's Bath on Shudder right now. It's from the directors that did the original Goodnight Mommy and The Lodge. It is fantastic.
I'm sold.
It is so good. If you like folk horror or just grief horror, and it's rough. It's not a happy movie, but it is a wonderful horror film.
Mm.
So nobody's talking about it. They should be, and you can watch it on Shudder right now.
The Lodge, I saw, that was the last movie I saw before the pandemic hit. I saw it in the theater, and I ended up naming it my favorite movie of 2020. It was that good.
I think you'll like this one. Yeah, I think you guys will like this one. It's German folk horror, and yeah, and the lead performance, wow. Unknown actress, I can't even pronounce her name, but she's amazing.
Anyone else seen anything you want to scream at? Good or bad?
Shoot.
Can I just say one thing about Long Legs without ruining it, without any spoilers?
Are you going to sing it?
No.
Because there's always a chance you'll sing things.
No, my brain doesn't work that quickly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I liked it. It's definitely Wes Anderson's Silence of the Lambs. I'm sorry. This is a looping thought that I've had since last night, and I can't stop thinking about it. I really need somebody to put the Wes Anderson music on the trailer for Long Legs. Please, God.
I'll get on it.
I saw Long Legs as well. There were several times that I jumped. There was one point where I fell asleep. And all I'm saying about Nicolas Cage is that he looked like he beat Medicare.
See, I haven't watched anything particularly new, but I did rewatch The Primevals, and I'm loving that. Absolutely loving that.
Yes. Oh wait, the dinosaur show or the stop motion
the new
movie?
new film.
Okay. I was gonna say, or it could have been the crocodile movie.
I love the crocodile movie.
The crocodile
movie on DVD, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. You can't go wrong, whichever it is.
Yeah. They should combine them all into one film. That would work. Dinosaurs, crocodiles.
Taking on stop motion creatures.
Correct.
That would be fun.
So we're going to talk about Maxine in a second, but I went to see 2 films in a week, which is kind of a special treat for me these days with my work schedule.
Bless you.
See, the mute button works, so you didn't have to endure that. If we were on a delay, this wouldn't happen. Some network, please, to pick us up. I saw a film called Kill, which is an Indian action film. And I talk about Indian action films a lot these days for a reason. There is nothing quite as visceral as Indian action films at the moment. And this one is probably the most violent film I've ever seen in a theater. And I've seen Cannibal Holocaust in the theater. I'm not saying I'm not saying that you're getting dead animals and things on screen. But if you thought the body count in something like Total Recall was high, oh no. No. And the even more impressive thing about it is how it handles its villains. So rather than make them all kind of people who just kind of run at actors and get killed, we get scenes of them terrified of having to do that. We have scenes of them mutinying against their bosses. We see 2 different bosses with 2 different different ideas about how to take on the protagonist. And the other thing is the fights are just, there's no slow motion whatsoever, which is kind of rare for Indian cinema. They're all super realistic fights. There's a lot of knives being used, and every punch, every stab, every head hitting porcelain, every door being slammed on someone's face hurts to watch. It feels like real violence. And in the middle of the film, it does something that you've never seen in one of these action films. Whereas it raises the stakes in a way that you would never see coming because we're programmed to think we understand how these movies work. It all works. It's awesome. It is sitting as my second favorite film of the year right now, only because Late Night with the Devil is just going to be a hard one to take down because it's perfectly in my sweet spot. for if you love action films, go see Kill. It's got an American distributor. It is in a theater near you right now. You might have to travel a half hour to find it, but it is across the whole country. It's got over a 90% score on every critic site you're going to see. It's not just Lauren loving Indian stuff. This film is, if you like action at all, this is going to cover your fix for a long time.
It's getting a Blu-ray and I think 4K as well. So hopefully more people will get a chance to see it if you can't make it to the theater.
Because Lionsgate picked it up through Roadshow Entertainment.
I think that's going to be more common now. Yeah.
With regards to the body count, does it exceed Hot Shots Part 2?
I've never seen Hot Shots Part 2.
Okay.
See, I was going to ask if it exceeds Better Tomorrow 2.
So it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because if I had to compare it with anything, I would say definitely those years of Hong Kong, like 1992 to 98, those years of Hong Kong ultra-violent action films, Better Tomorrow, The Killer, obviously the John Woo stuff, but also the off-brand stuff is exactly what I would compare it with. Absolutely. And you don't need any prep. You don't have to understand much about Indian culture except that arranged marriages are a thing and that a new young generation rejects them. That's all you need. If you have that, you're ready to go. You just get on the train with these characters and have a good ride. If anything, the film I'd compare it with, like emotionally, is Train to Busan. There's no zombies in this movie, though. All I'm saying is there's some rough emotional stuff coming at you. Be ready.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started. This is what people want us to talk about. This is why they showed up. Maxine.
Yeah.
Okay, since Stone was the most audible there over the title, why don't you lead us off, sir?
Okay. I think like a lot of people, I've been looking forward to this for months because, it's been 2 years since X and Pearl came out in 2022, pretty much together at opposite ends of the year. And so admittedly, my expectations were super high. And I went in, I watched it. I fell in love immediately with the period detail, with Ty West's attention to what Tinseltown looked like in the 80s, that sleazy, grimy, sticky floor ridden place with the peep shows and the X-rated theaters. And I thought that Mia Goth kicked ass, and I loved practically every scene in it. Loved the soundtrack. I love the fact that it starts out with a quote from Betty Davis, and it ends with Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. And just the overall atmosphere and aesthetic, the tribute to, Brian De Palma and all those films of the period, particularly like New World Pictures, that kind of thing, the video stores and everything. And while it did get a little shaky at the climax, I was a little worried about how the reveal of certain individuals played out. And yet at the same time, when it was over, I couldn't wait to watch it again. I fucking loved it.
Okay.
Sam, do you want to take it?
Sure.
Because you and I are going to yell at each other, Dan. So
I don't know about that. I don't think so.
Okay.
That's really interesting. I mean, I've been kind of going back and forth on where I stack Maxine and my ratings with, like Pearl and X. And having rewatched X, I would still say my lineup is Pearl first, then X, then Maxine. But the distance between Maxine and X is not that big. And I went into it with no expectations, mostly just because I was looking forward to seeing the next installment and finding out where the story went. And I was pretty happy with it, except for the ending. But I also don't think that if you've seen X, you know where the story's going. And I don't know where everybody is got these high expectations from. But I did like, this kind of theme of the kind of criticism of sex and entertainment that kind of just goes throughout all three movies. Although in Pearl, it's there, but the story is more about Pearl's isolation on the farm and like her mental breakdown, essentially. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. You guys go yell at each other.
I don't think we're gonna yell at each other at all. I mean, as far as the trilogy goes, I think X is a really fun but definitely flawed slasher. I like it a lot. Of course, I love Mia Goth, but there's that movie's not flawless. I think Pearl's the masterpiece of the trilogy. I kind of knew coming out of the theater, I was like, okay, Maxine is definitely my third favorite. There's a lot of issues with it. It's fun, but I don't know. It's a fun little nostalgia trip, and I appreciated some of the obscure references they had. Gun to Jennifer, which Lauren actually had brought up on a private conversation. Some of that stuff that not a lot of people would even pick up on. But that's all it is. I thought as a finale, I had a good time, but it's nothing even close to what Pearl was to me. And that's my brief thoughts. But some good gore. It captured that sleazy 85 feel pretty well, but I don't know. I guess maybe I shouldn't have expected more than I got. But after Pearl, I hope for more.
So I mean, I'd said last show that I was worried about expectations on this movie.
Yeah.
And I think expectations are precisely the problem with it, even for myself. I tried to beat myself down to expect a step down from Pearl. I wasn't expecting as big a step down. This is by far the worst of the trilogy, in my opinion. I don't think I don't see how an argument can really go another way. Now, that said, you can say it's my favorite. I can't have nothing to say about that, about what your favorite is. But it is a film that has massive, massive problems. And even X, which I have problems with some of the dumber slashery stuff in it, because it goes from being fairly smart and intricate to being pretty dumb pretty fast. It's still fun. I really didn't have much fun with Maxine.
Did you also have an issue? I mean, again, I don't want to give away spoilers, but Kevin Bacon is a PI that's in the trailer.
I had a huge problem with his entire character.
I was about to bring that up too.
I love Kevin Bacon in the movie. As far he's Kevin Bacon. He's got some fun stuff to do, but the means that this mysterious figure has, why is some old man the one that's like trying to physically chase her down?
It doesn't make sense.
And I brought that up to on our show, and they thought I was overthinking it, but I was like, but that's, I don't know, maybe for me that's kind of a big issue that you could have solved somehow. There's maybe a way around it. I don't know.
I don't think it's even tough. You just make them. I'm sorry, this is going to be part spoiler. I think everyone has seen the goddamn movie that's watching the show, though. Make him part of the fucking cult. It's not hard.
Yeah.
By making him a mercenary, you destroy the logic of the character. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, he's there to locate her. Why is this guy he's muscle?
Or set it up that he isn't just a PI.
Yeah,
but it doesn't work as it stands. It needs more context to work, and it doesn't. And I'd like to compare that. Like, what is? Did you have any questions about any of the motivations of any of the characters in X or Pearl?
No, not at all.
Not at all. But you do here. I got to bring up something before we get to the big problem, though, which is where I think we're going to yell at each other, Dan. And I still think we're probably going to yell at each other. And Stone, you're probably going to join him.
Okay.
I don't know, Sam. You might be on my side. I might be calling this wrong. I might be calling it wrong.
Are we going to shit on Kevin Bacon's character some more?
No. Well, no. Did you have something else you wanted to shit on about it?
I thought his character was fun and amusing, but he kind of doesn't fit with the rest of the movie if it's trying to take itself seriously. And it kind of reminds me of like Johnny Depp's shitty detective character in Tusk and Yoga Hosers. Like, why the fuck are you here? I keep going back to that.
Because they could afford him. Because he said yes.
Eh.
No, so thematically, X uses the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as its piece of art that it's reflecting off of.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Pearl is a little bit more cagey, but it's reflecting off of all those kind of Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, late 50s, early 60s, Mommy Dearest / whatever happened to Baby James, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte psychodramas, right? You're with me, right?
And Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, fuck, everyone uses Wizard of Oz for everything. That doesn't count for fucking anything. And it's not that great a film. But if you look, both of those are pretty contemporary to where they're set. They're both a few years later, but they make sense chronologically with what the movie is using as bedrock. Maxine, which is set in 85, decides that it's going to use its reflective piece of art as Psycho, a film from 1960. What the fuck, friends? It doesn't work. You have the detective following. You have the girl on the run from a crime. It is fucking Psycho. But to be fair, we're trying to do the De Palma thing, so of course it's Psycho, right? So some of it works because in a De Palma-esque sort of circular way. However, it's the wrong project. You need to reflect then Body Double if that's what you're going to do.
That's what I was thinking of more than Psycho.
Or Crimes of Passion. But they put the fucking Psycho house in the movie and have a speech about it.
It was a nice Easter egg.
No, bullshit.
No.
I think they could have gotten more out of that house too.
Oh, sure. Sure.
It just, I don't know.
They return to it too. I mean, they make a point of it.
Yeah.
They also the director has a line about pointing out the blonde to brunette thing, the brunette to blonde thing. It's decided the reflected piece of art is going to be Psycho, which would be fine if it was a film set in 1963, I guess, right? Because that's about as late as these films have been to get to their piece of art. But it doesn't work for me, and ultimately they do nothing with it, which is so different than the previous two films. Whereas those earlier piece of arts become critical to how the logic of the movie will resolve, especially the third act, which is why I think when we get to the third act of this film, and it just decides to be a fucking completely modern-esque kind of flick, completely out of tone with the rest of the movie, it doesn't work. It feels more like the Dean Koontz novel, Servants of Twilight, than it does the movie that preceded it. Yeah. I when I came out of the theater, I liked it more than I liked it upon reflection. And I think it's going to be one of those movies that multiple viewings are not going to do favors for. And this kills me to say, because I like Ty West a lot. But like Sam, I believe you said that at times you felt like you were watching different movies at the same time, scene to scene, right? Something along those lines. Yeah, Ty West has never been like that. He's a tone and atmosphere guy. This thing's all over the place, homaging or ripping off a scene from Gun from Jennifer. And then the next moment we're playing Frankie Goes to Hollywood real loud, which is obviously trying to reflect Body Double, right? Mm-hmm. But then we're going to have a New Order song in the film as well. So, that cements that it's the 80s. Yay. But watch House of the Devil. He doesn't need to do any of that to convey that it's the time period. He makes the movie itself look like the time period. He makes the acting choices. He guides the actors to be period reflective, right? This just feels like a big step down to me.
No, it definitely is. Even in a Valley of Violence, his Western, I think, is better. This is probably his weakest film. And again, he's got a very strong filmography, so I don't mean to shit on him too much, but I just knew walking out of the theater, I was like, that was fun, but man, like it's no Pearl, and it's no X either, which I swore coming out of it, I'm like, they're probably not going to be able to touch Pearl for me, but I bet I'll like it better than X. And it didn't even quite get there for me. So as it stands, it's still a fun trilogy, but I don't know. Pearl is the empire of the bunch.
And we'll get to trilogies in a moment. But
yes.
The final thing, and this is going to be the contentious one. I'm sorry. After the opening scene of the audition, anyone could have played Maxine in this movie. They didn't need Mia Goth.
That's where I'm going to have to yell at you. I mean, not yell at you, but I will respectfully disagree because, you know, I did hear complaints about Mia Goth, like, phoning it in or sleepwalking, right? And I disagree. I think Maxine is just aware of what's happening the whole time, and she knows, like, this is like an inevitable march to her fate. So, one thing I do wish that they had kind of focused on a little bit more was kind of like that very selfish individualism of the 80s, right? Because we have the I will not accept a life I do not deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could have been focused on a little bit more given the ending scene. I'm not going to spoil anything there, but I think there was kind of this interesting evolution of seeing how everything is shifting, you know, society's ideas of like sex and entertainment are just kind of shifting and progressing. And then by the time we get up to like Maxine, there's something that's trying to prevent that from continuing. Right. And, but it's like those things that enabled us to get where we are now, those created us. So they, you know, it's sort of like those forces have to acknowledge their own part in where we are. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. I apologize for being too vague.
That's okay. I also thought the after the reveal that actor was a little bit too over the top for me, and I know to some degree
it's broke, definitely.
Yeah, he could have reined it in.
Almost Judge Doom.
Yeah. I think he could have pulled back and gotten more out of it. And again, X to Pearl, I mean, very, very different. So maybe as time goes by, I can just accept this as flawed, good fun. And I'm sure I will be able to, but it just, I don't know. I can't lie. Even though I enjoyed it, I was a little bit disappointed.
I'm not going to let this go. I really don't think Mia Goth... I mean, she's fine in it. Her performance is fine. But she's not asked to do anything to showcase her range the way she... outside that initial audition scene. Yeah. Which is the big shame. I mean, anyone could have walked around and avoided Kevin Bacon. She doesn't speak very much in the movie. There's no line delivery.
No, you're right.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, if it's a physical role, then it's much more like her role in X, which is fine, except the role in X is the idea of X was like you have this group of people coming together to make a porn film, right? And she's the one with bigger ambitions. She's the one that sees this as just a stepping stone. Everyone else is all involved in the process on different levels, but everyone's making these concessions, as is she, right? Because it's all about what are you willing to sacrifice? That's what this whole franchise is about. That's fine. But in X, it's more of an ensemble piece until it's not an ensemble piece. And the reason she survives is she's the one willing to make the biggest she's willing to betray the most value to get where she wants to be. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and I mean, the brilliance of that is, of course, that like the Pearl character as an old woman has already done this. And it didn't work for her. So to me, like this should have ended with a big Mia Goth scene. Give us the table scene. Give us the audition at not climaxing this series with your strongest strength. I mean, it just comes off as what the fuck to me. Because honestly, you make Pearl the same movie with a different actress. I'm sorry, we're not gushing over this movie. We're not. I'm not saying no one could do it, but chances are very thin that anyone's going to take it on in the horror genre and do what she did.
You could have swapped her for a much lesser actress, and I don't think this movie would have lost much.
Outside that opening scene, right?
Yeah. Outside that, You know, you could have inserted any attractive lady in there and made it work. You couldn't have done that in Pearl. You needed a powerhouse for Pearl.
Let's go ahead.
Oh, were you satisfied with the kills and the murder scenes, like when she squashes Buster Keaton's balls?
Because I've seen the scene before in another film. No.
I mean, that still gets a visceral reaction.
And I love the video store kill. I love the video store murder. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, like I enjoyed that part with the squishing because I also looked at that as sort of like a farewell to the past in terms, you know, farewell to previous social and different mores of entertainment.
Cool. So that's how the movie should have ended, with her crushing her father's balls. Oops, did I reveal something? Sorry, you saw the first film, didn't you? This is not a surprise. The problem I have with that is if you're going to have this big female empowerment moment in the beginning of your movie and then have the rest of the film where she's running around scared of Kevin Bacon or other people, and then at the end of the film she's tied to a fucking tree as a damsel in distress, I'm not sure that works.
No, I don't think the third act works at all. There was just, and it's just, the problem is it's so much of the plot. It's just so much.
Mm-hmm.
The third plot was very, very shaky. It was very shaky.
Yeah.
But I was still very satisfied at the end.
I'm listen, the people who love this thing, I'm glad you love it. I really am. For me, it's just a big step down from the first two films.
I think it kind of should have ended in the obvious point where everything's resolved. I thought that part afterwards was, again, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, was unnecessary. I think there you go. That's your climax. I don't need anything more, but
so I have a question for you guys, serious, but because it sounds like we're not all that far apart, really.
Yeah.
Getting the realities of making films out of the way, okay? Because we wouldn't have gotten Pearl then, but can you imagine if the series went X, Maxine, Pearl?
Well, yeah, that
thematically, I think we work a lot better.
It would have. You would have left off on such a high point.
Yeah.
But then, you know, then you're breaking the rule of the third movie in the franchise being dog shit.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Second topic for the night.
Is that like Trilogies?
Yes. Hollywood seems fixated at the moment on trilogies, where they're greenlighting 3 films in the Stranger series at a time. They keep announcing trilogies to films before they even get the first one off the ground. Obviously, Marvel spent so much time making trilogies of characters none of us gave a shit about. Or don't give a shit about now. I guess for then, maybe people cared. First off, what do we feel about trilogies? Is it a good idea? Is it a good idea only if it's planned? Is it something that's hard to retrofit? How do we feel about trilogies before we get into our examples of good or bad or indifferent?
They never end up staying trilogies most of the time. They always come back. Like, fucking stop making plans. Just write some fucking stories.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. How many films end up trilogies and they just don't stay trilogies, even though they should? Or in some cases, not even be a bloody trilogy.
No.
Like, I guarantee you, future segment on this goddamn show is going to be, what's your favorite trilogy in a franchise?
Yeah.
Never know, 3, 4, and 5. There you go.
Can we include Mighty Joe Young with Kong and Son of Kong? Is that acceptable?
No, I don't watch a lot of
I don't know. Can't give you that one.
It's not a real trilogy, but that's how I see it. So the way I think about trilogies is that if they're planned, which is obviously better than if it's not planned, because we see what happens when they're not planned. I think to a large degree, Maxine is kind of a good example of something that probably wasn't as planned as you'd think. We know that the second film was written on the set of the first. Really, they should be the 3-act structure just applied over the course of 3 films, right? So the first film should introduce the hero and the villain, the main conflict, and allow the hero to have a smaller victory at the end. The second is where you raise the stakes and give the advantage to the antagonist so that you can leave on the darkest note. And then the third film should be, as the third act should be in most films, not in MaXXXine, you start on the lowest point and you allow your hero to overcome whatever personal problem or situation had held them back from actually succeeding in the second act, so they can actually succeed and win overall. That's the traditional hero's journey 3-act structure hybrid, right? But if you don't plan it, how do you do that? Right. And also, Hollywood is scared of really dark movies, so we often don't get that second part that's actually dark enough to make the third part really strong. Does that make sense to you guys? Or
Yeah.
So I mean, I the obvious example is Star Wars, because I think everyone's got that rolling through your head, because how do you not? It's so cultural. And even though they fucked up Return of the Jedi hopelessly, it still follows that journey pretty well.
Oh yeah.
But I look at it as almost Hollywood as a commercial entity can't get their head around that basic philosophy, which should work. They're too afraid that a dark second part, which with a downer ending, is gonna just destroy the franchise and you're done.
And can I just say that Star Wars, like you said, is the very classic example of that, because and I think with a lot of trilogies, I think the biggest issue is when you bring in different perspectives or different points of view, it makes everything skewed. And with Star Wars, it was really, to me, what killed that franchise was when George Lucas fired his producer, Gary Kurtz, who was the real force of that trilogy, because he's the one that actually brought the force to the whirlwind. And even the screenwriter, Lawrence Kasdan, was like, somebody's got to die. We got to kill somebody off in Return of the Jedi. George Lucas refused to hear that. He absolutely refused to hear that. And that's why Return of the Jedi, I don't hate Jedi, but it suffers so much because of that. But I think it's just a matter of, people make one film, and then for some reason or another, they have to bring in other filmmakers to do the other films. And it just takes everything off into different directions.
There is a lot of talk in the chat about the Evil Dead movies, which obviously don't follow the format I just explained, because they're all in different genres. Yeah. Just using horror as a kind of tent pole to get all your other creature feature into, black comedy, into just outright Harryhausen action film.
Yeah.
But yeah, that works really well. It doesn't hold together as a trilogy very well, but doesn't need to. And again, much like the MaXXXine series, it's holding itself together with a lead actor, right?
Yeah.
So that's a commercial.
I have my trilogy is a terrible trilogy, really, really bad trilogy, but a fantastic first movie, Candyman. Something good example of something that never should have been. I put over Candyman a lot. It's arguably the best horror movie of the 90s. It's
has to be the conversation.
Pure horror film. I think that movie's perfect. I don't think anybody, certainly at the studio, got it in the first place, even though it's all right there. There is no Candyman. But that one just kind of came to mind because 2 has its moments, I suppose, but it should have never have existed. It's really dumb that it exists. And 3,
oh god,
holy shit.
I don't know. Is Donna D'Errico just wearing a wig in 3? Because that
I looked at that. I mean, I know that's a direct-to-video sequel, and I knew going into it not to have expectations, but I just look at that, and as I've gotten older, sometimes 1 is enough. Candyman is a masterpiece. It never needed a remake. Yeah, it's perfect, and sometimes that's okay. It's okay to just have that be it. And I think that's my attitude more often than not now. And no, Sean, I still don't like the remake.
But would you place 2021 above Candyman 3?
Well, yes,
Yes.
but if I had a gun held on me, I would probably watch 3 just because the remake annoyed me in a lot of different ways. But
the remake cribs from 3 though, with the art, with the art exhibit, and I can't remember exactly how because I've blocked both of those movies out of my mind, but it's very similar.
I just the problem with that remake is just that it doesn't understand the original film. It tries to reestablish the film as a different thing, and that would be fine if you weren't preaching at the audience the entire time rather than telling a compelling story. So it becomes just a bunch of socially relevant memes being thrown at you, not cleverly. That whole concept could still have worked. It could have, but you have to be a good writer. You have to be a good conceptualist, I guess is what I'm saying. And the first film is so perfectly conceived. And especially if you go back to the original short story, Bill Condon needs a lot of freaking credit for spearheading that thing where it ended up, because I'll take that movie over the short story any day of the week. I will. And I think Clive Barker's story is good.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best Book of Blood story by far, but it's solid. But that movie is I think it probably is the best horror film of the 90s. Shame that we got it out of the way right off the top, right? Because it was like one of the first released.
Oh yeah, I mean, my God, when horror was, 92, we're getting very sparse in terms of what's coming out, and I remember watching that in the theater and being terrified. Like I wasn't getting that from a lot of new movies at that time, and
that Philip Glass score too. Everything is conceptually just perfect about that movie. It's awesome.
Virginia Madsen, one of the great all-time screen performances. Yeah. Tony Todd is pitch perfect
and used just enough.
Yeah, Xander Berkeley, great character actors. The asshole character, he was also fantastic. Everybody is just right. That movie is pure perfection. It didn't deserve to go the direct to video route. And Candyman 3 is worse than, Wishmaster 3 and 4 to me.
They were never good. They were never like legit good to begin with.
Yeah, I don't have expectations, and those at least have some fun schlocky moments. But I remember watching Candyman 3 thinking like, how? It's my same issue as with Hellraiser 3. It's Hellraiser 3's. It's fun. It's better. Obviously, it's better than Candyman 3, but it should not have existed.
And CD head can get in the bin.
Yes, it shouldn't have existed. It's like, I get it. People like it. I like the Motorhead song as much as anybody, but it shouldn't have existed. It makes they missed the point, and that's.
Well, the funny thing is, all the flashback stuff, all the creation of Pinhead stuff, which should be the stuff that pisses me off the worst, because I don't believe you should explain your big bad. I believe that takes the power away from. But all those scenes kind of work. So the rest of the movie doesn't work at all. The opening scene of the body being brought into the hospital, that is pretty strong stuff. And then the movie has no atmosphere after that. It's rough. But that's the Clive Barker thing. Like, the stuff that they were kind of close to the source material kind of comes out okay usually. But as you go on and trying to milk more and more from it, I think we've discovered that unless you have a real visionary, which we have never seen happen in these franchises, right?
No.
It just doesn't work.
And I don't know. Some of those franchises people are weird with. Candyman is not a slasher. It was never really meant to be a slasher. Hellraiser certainly is not a slasher. And I was shocked the last Hellraiser movie, I'll be honest, nobody's really talking about it anymore. I thought, not perfect, but I thought they did a really good job getting it back on track. I thought Jamie Clayton was amazing as the Hell Priest. And
I like it better than Doug Bradley. I do.
Yeah, again.
I know no one's going to say that but me, but that's fine. The problem that movie has is no likable characters. if they would have fixed that problem, they would have had a film that people would be talking about today, because there's nothing else dramatically wrong with it. I'm not sure I love the prick your finger on the cube thing, but I could live with it.
Yeah. It was a step in the right direction and a good, starting off point for a new trilogy. But I don't know. I guess I have different tastes than most people.
I'm hoping we get a proper trilogy out of it. I thought it was really, really good. I was not disappointed in that one at all.
Yeah. Everybody says like, they're the 13 Ghost Hellraiser, like that's a bad thing. I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. That's
a lot closer to what we had been getting.
Yeah, I see it visually, and that works for me.
Anyone else have any trilogies you want to discuss?
Yes, I have one. Earlier, I mentioned New World Pictures, of course, which was run by Roger Corman. And I got to admit that I never saw these movies in the 80s, but I am now a huge, huge fan of the Slumber Party Massacre trilogy.
Yeah.
Lauren's reaction. But anyway, look, these films, 1 and 2 in particular, they're less than 80 minutes long. They got the Roger Corman requisites of, throwing some boobs, throwing some gore. The original film is written by a legendary feminist author called Rita Mae Brown.
Yes.
Who wrote Ruby Fruit Jungle. And yes, the title refers to female genitalia. I read that book in college. I highly recommend it. It's a great book which showcases her struggles with identifying with her lesbianism, and how later she even, the character even goes to film school at one point. And even though Amy Jones, who directed Slumber Party Massacre, and by the way, all these films, including the remake, all written, produced, and directed by women. That's something to stipulate right there. Amy Jones admitted that when she rewrote the script, that the only thing that was saved from the Rita Mae Brown script was, of course, the driller killer's drill right there, which, of course, is a metaphor for a man's penis. And it's supposed to be about, even though it was shot as a straight horror film, the theme is, women being scared of losing their virginity and that kind of thing. I love the first film. In fact, I even bought the Steelbook based on our friend Piz's recommendation when he did his video back in 2020. I mean, look at that artwork. Just look at that artwork. Yeah, courtesy of Screen Factory. And I love the sequel nearly as much as the first one. I mean, like, they make the killer like this Elvis-like character with the drill coming out of his guitar, which is pretty hilarious. And I love the soundtrack to that as well. And but the third film is awful. It has zero connections to the first film. I mean, Slumber Party Massacre 2 at least takes one of the characters from the first film and makes her the protagonist. But the third film is so awful, it's not even worth talking about. But I did finally see the remake from 2 years ago. You replace that with Slumber Party Massacre 3, and you have a perfect trilogy in my book.
You say you love the soundtrack. The garage band in the film, the music is by Wednesday Week.
How much do you want for that? No.
Well, I mean, so the song in particular is Why, which was written by Don Dixon and released on his album Praying Mantis. No relation. This is my original cassette from '89.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And finally, last but not least, I love the remake for how it subverted expectations and flipped things around. Like, there's one bit where, like, this guy starts masturbating when he sees all the girls partying, and then he then sees the driller killer at the opposite end, and he's just like, who's that pervert? I mean, no, I highly recommend the remake. Replace it with Slumber Party Massacre 3, and you have a perfect slasher trilogy in my book.
That's part of a why, because the Massacre series, you go into sorority, and then Cheerleader Massacre.
Although, to be fair, the first Sorority House Massacre movie was written and directed by women. All those sequels, however, were all men, like Jim Wynorski and everything. I haven't seen those sorority films or the cheerleader films, but yeah, it is part of this bigger franchise. I just wanted to yeah.
Sorority House Massacre, the first one's pretty boring. Then it takes a complete turn.
Yeah.
It's an interesting if you ever want to dive into all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, do you have a trilogy that?
Yeah. Now, I was originally going to mention the Cube trilogy because I felt it was kind of Saw before Saw, but just purely because you mentioned like the 3 acts, I'm going to say the Vengeance trilogy because it absolutely is not the 3 acts.
Yeah,
and it's more of a trilogy in theme only. But there is so much to love in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, and Old Boy in particular. I mean, Old Boy, I remember seeing that the first time, and like the fight scene, that one-shot fight scene with the claw hammer in the hallway, that was just absolutely phenomenal. And then when it gets to the end, and you have that twist, and the guy's decision of what to do about it at the end, and you kind of think, God, that was a horrible choice, but I'm not sure what else you could have done at this point.
Yeah.
Fair.
That was a movie. I remember seeing it in the theater, and I probably just sat there for like 10 minutes just thinking, holy shit.
And then came the remake.
Yeah.
It's funny because all those Marvel Netflix shows all tried to do the hammer fight in the hallway. Like, they all just stole it verbatim, pretty much. And that was like the whole point of their goddamn shows.
There was as well, didn't he? Because he had to actually eat a live squid, and he had to do it several times over to get the take right. And because of his religion, he had to pray in between every single take.
I couldn't be that actor. I could probably eat the squid. I just couldn't pray.
Wait, it was a live squid?
Yeah.
Yeah, but can't you just suffocate on them? Because tentacles, suction cups.
I don't know how that would go.
I'm kind of lost.
It didn't bother the deep in the boys either, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so I know, like, you know, usually if you're eating, like, I know this applies to live octopuses, so I'm assuming it would also apply to squids because they both have suction cups, but they can grasp the inside of your throat while you're eating them live. So I've heard that there is a risk of suffocation. I'm like, Jesus. I mean, I'd pray between eating each one because I'd be like, well, thank God I'm still alive.
Those 3 films in particular also are really important because coming out of the 90s, right? So Hong Kong had become kind of a cliche version of itself. Okay, there's going to be gunfire and then pigeons are going to fly, right?
Yeah.
So like that whole like Asian action thing had taken a turn where people were starting to really gravitate away. And Oldboy comes out with this soulful but mean-spirited film that's so different than what had being done so routinely just a couple years earlier.
Yeah.
It is really a sea change movie in the same way that Ringu was a sea change for Asian ghost films, or like Die Hard was for American action films, right? After Die Hard, there was only Die Hard ripoffs for 10 years, right? Oldboy kind of opens it up. I think the influence of something like Oldboy even extends beyond the action genre or the psychological thriller genre, whatever you want to really consider it part of, because it straddles both. But again, I mentioned Train to Busan before. I don't think you can get Train to Busan without Oldboy. I think there's a link chain there of that heavy emotion, big surprises, but also kind of that nature of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, raw earth, like brutality in nature aspect. And I think Oldboy is perfect. Also, Oldboy does one thing I really love, which is that the concept, if someone just tells you it, is unworkable. You'd look at it and go, they're not making a movie about that. That's fucking stupid. What, they kept him in a hotel room? What? How does that work? Right? But Hollywood or filmmaking is at its best when we are mythologizing, right? Think too hard about Hellraiser and there's lots of problems, right? There are. I mean, if you just don't go searching for pleasure and pain from the afterworld, you're pretty much not going to have to deal with this problem. So but when you are willing to bridge that and say, but if, then you get these wonderful stories that are so compelling and manage to map in our brains in some strange, intricate way to our lives. But they couldn't, if you just mapped to things that could happen in our lives, it wouldn't work. We wouldn't respond in this way, and we couldn't explore as deeply. So yeah, I think Old Boy and Miss Vengeance in particular, wow, they're like really,
it was a big shift as well, because I know certainly over here, before we got the Vengeance trilogy, all people really knew when they thought Korean cinema was like Whispering Corridors and that whole series, and that was what you just assumed everything coming out of there was.
Yeah, Koreans are the most consistent, probably. Like, how often do you see a bad Korean movie? And I'm not just talking horror or action. It's rare.
Well, no, but it used to not be like that.
No, I get that, but certainly in recent memory, I'm hard pressed. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Listen, we're in a world where Parasite exists, right? So clearly you're right. But I think in the early 90s,
oh, sure.
I think there was a lot of like lame attempts to imitate whatever was popular in Hong Kong at that moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because that was I think a lot of places in the world went along that path, whereas they'd imitate whatever a big market that their local population was buying as imports, right? So India was infamous for trying to constantly ape American films. Well, now they've surpassed them. Now they're looking over their shoulders at us now. And the same thing, I think very much, what's happening in Hong Kong right now that's got everyone excited? Not globally. Local Hong Kong, I'm sure it's great, but no, Korea is in a way better place.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you start out as imitating, you get your feet under you, and then some great artists come along and they just change shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope it happens for other regions. I mean, Turkey, Indonesia, we're getting such amazing stuff. And
did you see the Section 7 announcement this week?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you never know what's gonna do it. I know a lot of people out there. It's like, man, nobody's ever gonna. Not too long ago, nobody's ever gonna care in America about Indian films, and then RRR comes along. Mm-hmm. I think Old Boy definitely did that for Korean cinema. I'm getting ahead of myself because there's one that I think is going to come up in another segment that did that for J horror, and yeah. I'm always delighted to see it happen. You mentioned Kill, which I haven't gotten to see yet.
You've got to fucking see it.
Every single movie I was like reviewing that last week was like 2.5 hours, so I just couldn't. But I plan
prioritize it this week. Just prioritize it. Make it happen.
I'm gonna try. If
Dan, you're gonna walk out being gobsmacked.
Yeah. More often than not, I am, and so yeah.
Sam, did you have a trilogy?
Yeah, I chose a trilogy that is similar to Dan's, but there's a bigger drop off in quality. But there's still a guy with a hook hand. So I went with the I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy.
Oh.
It's really funny because by the time we get to the third movie, I mean, like, Ben Willis is almost a tulpa, but I think it's more of it's just like a ghost, I guess. But he still can, affect things within the corporeal realm. So kind of tulpa, but it's stupider. So and
that's a good description, actually.
Oh yeah. No, I chose this because like we are going to be getting like an I Know What You Did Last Summer requel. It sounds like. So it doesn't sound like it's going to be a reboot because from the plot details that I'm seeing, the whole thing with Ben Willis is still like part of that universe. And I'm seeing both Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. in the cast list on IMDb. So I don't know a lot about the plot itself other than that like the incident takes place at an engagement party. And also one of the characters is a climate influencer, which just makes me want to like throw myself down the stairs, but that's another story. Like it's kind of shaping up to be a hot mess when you just are like, okay, they're a climate influencer. All right, let's see where this goes. So the thing that really separates it from Scream though, that ends up being like a giant problem for that series is like Stone pointed out, there's no humor in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like Scream has some like witty banter. There's like fuck all of nothing in there. Like everybody's taking this as serious as a heart attack. And, I think the first movie, it's fine as a little slasher. It's kind of like, I'm going to have a Pepsi instead of a Coke. I'm going to watch I Know What You Did Last Summer instead of Scream. Nice change of pace, but it's not like anything like, it's not really any sort of great cinema. But
it's not wild cherry Pepsi.
Touche. But the quality drops off so fast between I Know and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and I rewatched everything. Like, I've literally watched all 3 movies plus the fucking Amazon show within the last week. Ooh. Ask me anything. But I Still Know is so terrible because, like, the whole thing about Jonathan, you're late. So, what gets the... It's incredible. But what gets the series of events rolling that's such a fucking problem is like Jennifer Love Hewitt and Brandy, who is taking over from Sarah Michelle Gellar in this movie.
Upgrade.
They win tickets on the radio because Brandy has to answer like, what's the capital of Brazil?
She gets it wrong.
And it's wrong. And this is at the beginning of the movie. And I saw this movie as a child. Well, not a child, but I was like 14 years old. And I was like, that's not the capital of Brazil, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, it's a setup from the beginning. And then you've got this sad sack character, Will Benson, who's like fucking pining for Jennifer Love Hewitt's character. And meanwhile, like...
Who doesn't?
Fair. But like, meanwhile, she's still kind of got a boyfriend, but he goes to fucking the fucking Bahamas also on this trip, which, all right. But his name is like Will Benson, and then he even says so at the end of the movie when it's revealed he's actually the son of Ben Willis, and he and Ben Willis have been committing the murders. Will, Ben's son, and I'm like, you get it? Do you get it?
I love I Still Know. If that whole wave of shitty slashers that I detest so much, I'll take that fucking movie every day of the week because it so knows what it is and it doesn't give a flying fuck who cares. Oh, it's so ridiculous.
And Jeffrey Combs is in there just getting a paycheck, being the hotel clerk.
Everyone's getting a paycheck on that thing. That's the whole point. It's
bad.
No, it's gloriously bad. And it
did you mention? Sorry.
Just knows what it is. I love that.
Did Rastafari and Jack Black come up yet?
No, not yet. Your favorite character?
That's the best part of that movie.
That is Jonathan's reincarnation this next life.
Everybody wants Jamie Kennedy back. Why not bring back Rastafari and Jack Black? Take that over Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah. And it's just it's a terrible movie. I mean, it came out literally the year after the first one. Just wretched. I guess watch it if you have to be a completionist. But so the drop off in quality is like so fucking steep. But it got worse. Like somehow it got worse because I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. That is a pinnacle in like bad movie history. I've seen that movie. I have seen that movie 3 times now. That's more times than anybody should have to see it.
That represents 65% of the audience. Ever.
It's a third of the box office.
So, you know how like the first 2 movies were set in areas where there's a body of water? First we had North Carolina, beautiful fishing town. We had the Bahamas, gorgeous. Even the TV series takes place in Hawaii. Fabulous. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. In Colorado. In the mountains. Because fishermen are known to just, show up there, right? And I'm sorry, I'm going to go off on a rant on this movie. I hate it so fucking much. So this one starts off with a prank instead of somebody getting hit, while there's drunk driving going on. But the prank is that there's this carnival happening for July 4th. Our group of fresh meat who all look like they came out of an Abercrombie catalog, and they have the whitest fucking names humanly possible. There's a Zoe, there's an Amber, there's a Lance, there's a fucking Colby in our main cast.
A Colby.
Yes. And not the cheese, unfortunately.
Not the cheese.
Yeah. Colby Jack. So I wish that was his last name. I should probably actually go look just to make sure. So they've got this prank that they're doing. One of them dresses up like the fisherman and even has like they got the hook from the actual murders to do this prank. They even say the hook from the actual murders. It was only $39 on eBay.
To be fair, that's probably accurate.
Yeah, so the guy, the kid dressed as the fisherman is chasing everyone around. One of their other friends, for who knows what reason, is on a roof and I guess acting kind of drunk. And then all of a sudden, the fisherman appears, right? And starts kind of menacing towards him. And this kid's a skateboarder. And he goes and he skateboards off the roof like he's doing a real cool jump. But somebody moved the fucking mats. And he ends up dying because he falls to his death. But he impales himself. The mats probably wouldn't have fucking helped. So then that's the secret that they all have to keep under wraps. And, the usual shit happens, right? Fine. Like, turns out, because and later on, I think it's, somebody cuts themselves, like, with the fishing hook, with the hook, and that's what causes, like, part of what causes, like, Ben Willis to come back as a fucking tulpa, or a zombie, or whatever you want to call it, right? Because you bled on the actual hook from the murders. Anyway, we get through this. It's terrible. Our main character, as we do with the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, everybody dies in the final scene. Like it happened in the first two movies too. Like Jennifer Love Hewitt's character gets ganked, allegedly. So this also happens to our protagonist. But she gets ganked by the fisherman in the middle of the desert. I'm asking you sincerely, guys. Y'all have to. I cannot make this shit up. And this was the person that we decided to let direct the Slender Man movie. Great job, guys! Everybody, give yourself a round of applause.
To paraphrase Stephen Baldwin from one of my favorite college movies, I think I'd rather have a dog fart in my face than watch Slender Man or I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer.
I'd rather take a shit and look at it for an hour and a half.
And yet you've watched it 3 times.
I know.
She took the assignment seriously.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, the trilogy, oh, God. I don't know if... Like, if they make a movie worse than I'll Always Know You Did Last Summer with the next one that's coming out, that's impressive. We'll see. I don't think I can have my expectations any lower. But I would probably give the I Know What You Did Last Summer's TV series on Amazon a chance if you want something that's kind of like hot mess, like kind of like, Hannibal, but you can't commit the time to Hannibal, like to 3 seasons of hot messness, but you have like 8 hours because it's only 8 episodes of 1 hour each. And they didn't renew it for a second season. I have to and also I'll tell you why. It's because this thing is like constructed very poorly, but it's kind of trashy in a fun soap opera way. But the problem is, like, you have twins as the protagonist, essentially. So one of the twins gets hit, but it's, and the twin that's driving is with the other twin's friends in the car. So the friends think it's, like, twin A, but it's not twin A, it's twin B. So they think that they killed this one, but it's actually the other way around. It's very confusing.
So right? Wait, so they really adapted to Happy Birthday to Me instead.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen it.
Ooh.
I know.
Well, How have you seen that 3 times and not happy birthday
Exactly.
to me, Sam?
No, I have not
Yeah.
seen the series 3 times. I've
See,
only seen
Sam was
3 times.
Sam was going out of her way not to spoil Maxine, but I just spoiled a film that, like, deserves not to be spoiled.
It's fine. Like, I'm over here. I have to spoil. I'm going to spoil all the I Know What You Did Last Summer TV series for anybody though, because this is the kind of like batshit level we're dealing with. One of the characters ends up getting stabbed through the back, out through the chest, right, and essentially left for dead. And for some reason, they cut her arm off, like right here, because that's what we're setting up for, I guess. We're setting up for that hook hand. So they leave her for dead, and then one of the crazy women from the cult that used to be on the island, like there's a cult subplot for some reason too, which is okay. So the crazy woman takes her to her like cave by the ocean, right? And mummifies her with honey. Because she's preparing her corpse, I suppose. Anyway, that corpse gets found, by the authorities, and they're still dealing with all the forensic bullshit. So they ship it to Boston, right? Boston gets the corpse, still crystallized in honey, like covered in honey, like literally covered in honey. And they take it to like cold storage, and you see this fucking honey corpse with the arm cut off right here in cold storage. As the final shot of the series, her eyes open. Motherfucker. This is why y'all didn't get renewed. I'm sorry. I've put in way too many hours towards that whole universe this week.
You did a lot of hate watching this week.
I did.
On a similar thread, the trilogy I wanted to discuss began much more ceremonial with the original Poltergeist, a film that mirrored in endless controversies, real-life deaths. But I think we all kind of like the original film, no matter who you are, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those seminal, you saw it, you were allowed to watch it when you were young, so you kind of love it. Has its problems, but nothing major. But to me, I didn't see Poltergeist in the theater. I was a little young. I was seeing other films in the theater, but I didn't see Poltergeist. But I did see Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, in the theater. And besides the goofy last 10 minutes of that movie that really needs to just be exercised from that film, I like Poltergeist 2 so much more than the original. And I love Tobe Hooper. It's hard for me to say that, but Poltergeist 2 kind of rocks hard for most of its runtime until the whole family goes to the other side and holds hands and true love defeats evil. Which completely flies in the face of the first film, and logic. But that second film has so much cool in it. You have an H.R. Giger monster that's born out of tequila. You have chainsaws floating through the air in the garage attacking the dad.
Mm-hmm.
You have Indian curses on top of dead, religious extremists from 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. You have one of the best fucking villains of 80s horror in Reverend Kane, who is still jaw-droppingly terrifying on every view, and does it in broad daylight.
Yeah,
that ghost walks down the street in broad daylight singing a hymn, and you're done. You're done. He goes shopping with the family, and you're done. Poltergeist 2 is so freaking underrated. It's not funny. I don't use that word often, but in this case, I don't think the original has much on it until that ending.
2 is fantastic.
This is going to depress Lauren, but Poltergeist 2 was nominated for an Academy Award for the visual effects, lost to Aliens.
Yeah, I can see that. No, the difference there is that Aliens was never treated as a sequel in the eyes of the critics. Mm-hmm. It never was. Whereas Poltergeist was looked at as pure cash grab. Which is, I think, unfair to the film they made. I think there's a lot more detail in Poltergeist 2 than most people give credit for. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you're going to attack alcoholism and you physically create a monster out of the alcohol. I'm down. Mm-hmm. And that monster rules, by the way.
It does.
There's so much about that film I love. I'll tell you that opening, their back sequence with Carol Ann is far scarier than the television scene in the first film.
I mean, an actual dying man as
Julian
Kane.
Beck.
Oh my God! Like, yeah, Julian was just. It's hard to beat that. A guy who had one foot in the grave in that role. Yeah. I agree. I can't say that it's better than the original, but I do love Poltergeist too.
Again, you have to make the caveat: the last 10 minutes got to go. But if so, then a couple years later, 1988 rolls around, and I go to a movie theater in Clinton, New Jersey, which no longer exists. There's now a McDonald's there. This theater was infamous in the area because it played pornography on nights and weekends, and then like regular films through the week, which is probably a bad combination. In a small town America, you've actually seen Clinton. If you've ever seen the Red Mill in New Jersey, you've seen Clinton, New Jersey. It's quintessential Americana. And Poltergeist 3 unveiled itself to me in the most painful way imaginable. A film that had all the right actors to be a favorite of mine. It has Tom Skerritt in it. It has Nancy Allen.
Laura Flynn Boyle.
Well, no, that's not going to happen. The Bad Donna? Seriously? Give me my Moira Kelly any day of the week.
Toe pick.
Firewalk with me for the win.
Yeah.
But horrible film. Misguided on every level. And it was even a little bit more reprehensible afterwards because for years I heard, oh, it's because Heather O'Rourke died during the filmmaking that the film's a mess. Oh, no. They had a complete cut of the film. She died during reshoots because the film was so fucking bad. And then they cobbled together an ending that makes no sense. It's who decided that the film had to only have full stage practical effects? There was no problem with the optical effects in the first two films, but they decided that dry ice was going to make up the difference. By the way, that's a movie that forgets about a character. Laura Flynn Boyle's boyfriend dives into a pool in the parking garage and never comes back.
I love that.
The movie forgets about him. You have some ridiculous shit. The magic trinket gets introduced late in the film. It's like, oh, this will save everything. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Imagine the after credits, though. He just pops out. Where the fuck did everyone go?
That's how they should. Oh, they should start a late in the day sequel, and that character should come out of the puddle. Just ignore everything else except that character.
Night Swim crossover.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Poltergeist is the most fascinating franchise to me because it went from a film that was beloved when it came out because at the time the idea of a Spielberg-Hooper collaboration was kind of like perfect for the zeitgeist of the world of entertainment. Then it went to a film that I think had way more going for it but did not have a reputation that matched its quality. And then it just completely went to complete crap.
Yep.
And no one defends Poltergeist 3. Because
I don't even remember how it ends. I've seen it so many times.
There's a bunch of mirrors and dry ice and lights. And then Tangina Barons sacrifices herself to trap Kane into going into the light. Ask me how I know this. I might own a French Blu-ray of this film.
Oh, God.
And isn't that a body double for Carol Ann at the end because we don't see her face? Yeah, I knew it.
Third round of reshoots where she was already gone.
If you must watch, just make sure you take a shot every time you hear the name Carol Ann.
Carol Ann!
You hear it 50 fucking times.
That needs to be like a not region free. That would be a fun live commentary to do. Drinking game and every time take a drink every time Carol Ann gets mentioned.
Also, I want to mention that Carol Ann should never be allowed to own pets. It
Correct.
never worked out well.
Yes.
Hey, Lauren.
What's up?
So, how would you fix the ending to Poltergeist 2? Because doesn't it end with like Deus Ex Grandma or something like that?
Pretty much.
Okay. How are you rewriting that?
So, I mean, to me, Poltergeist, again, if you go back to that three act structure deal, Poltergeist 2 should end with a darker ending than the first film. Which the first film ends with a pretty dark ending. The family home implodes, which is kind of thematically what's happening during the whole film, into a television light. That's what's left afterwards, is literally a television turning off as the image of the house imploding. You can overlay them, and that works perfectly. And so the second film, I think, needed to end on a darker note. I think you really needed to kill one of the family members in a sacrificial way, but I think it had to be Jo Beth Williams, because Craig T. Nelson's character in the first film is sidelined pretty early, because it becomes about a film about a woman saving her daughter, protecting her daughter from the influences of the world. So I think it has to be that character, but that's not what we got. We got, if the whole family stays together, everything's fine. And oh, look, dead grandma's going to take on Kane. It's fine. Again, I will not defend the ending, but I will defend everything up to that pretty shockingly, strongly. If you haven't watched Poltergeist 2 in a long time, watch it again. Be ready to be disappointed by the last 10 minutes, but watch the film up to that point. It is so strong. The grandma dying in the beginning works like a bitch. Yeah. It's a great inciting incident. It really is, because that thematically goes back. It's like, okay, now Carol Ann has to deal with real trauma. In the first film, her fucking parakeet died. Now it's grandma. The escalation is perfect, but they just, for some reason, that ending, I have to think studio notes in that ending.
Yeah. I'll have to rewatch it this Halloween. It's been a while. I don't think I've watched 3 since... God, that's been a very long time, but I had
friends over and we did a bad movie night a couple years ago, and we did Jaws the Revenge, Poltergeist 3, and Exorcist 2 the Heretic.
Oh.
Yeah. And then no one spoke to me for like 2 months.
Yeah, but Exorcist 3 is good.
Two.
Sorry.
Heretic.
I got them confused.
No way.
I switched the 3s and the 2s. My bad.
Believer is still worse than 2. I'm just saying.
I agree.
Believer's way fucking worse.
They're both garbage, but yeah.
It's different, but the level of camp, unintentional, but the level of camp into saves it, because I could deal with James Earl Jones just up in cosplay as a giant locust.
That's funny, though, for about a second. Like, that movie is hard to sit through. And I like camp. I like bad movies.
Yeah. And Linda Blair looks great in 2. Oh, she looks so good.
Just watch her and something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, isn't she on
watch her
in that movie?
She's right on the edge. Watch out. If you're gonna go full creep, just watch Born Innocent and be done with it.
Well, Savage Streets. Savage Streets is my jam. You know that.
There you go. You're okay.
Yeah.
When the mafia makes a revenge movie.
Yes.
Literally what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've talked about trilogies for way longer than we ever probably should have. So let's talk about something a little hairier.
Werewolf.
I'm going to turn the mic over to Matt at this point, because Matt is probably our werewolf expert on the panel and on the planet.
I'd say probably more werewolf obsessed than an expert, but so I am currently trying to collect every werewolf movie in existence. I have a nice case here with 120 werewolf movies in of varying degrees of quality. The thing is, werewolves, generally speaking, people think of them as representing the monster within, or if you've seen Company of Wolves, Ginger Snaps, The Wildling, representing puberty. But they're actually a more diverse tool than that. If you go all the way back to some of the early movies, for example, Wolfblood, Tale of the Forest was a 1920 silent film, and that's the oldest one still in existence. And that was more about a fear of Native American culture breaking into more urban areas. there's a lot of stuff that's with werewolves that people just don't realize or don't use. Sometimes they can just be a monster, and that works perfectly fine. For example, Silverhide, I think it was Pounce in America, in the American release, is just a monster. And it's a terrible movie, absolutely terrible movie. I'm certain with the werewolf in that, the prop department kind of said to them, well, we don't have the budget for a full costume, but I watched Critters last night, so I'm pretty sure I can make a hand puppet. And there's just so much charm to how bad that is. So I wanted to give an example of one tonight that's, I think people will know, but again, it's a little bit different for werewolf movies, and that was Wolf Cop. Wolf Cop has a little bit of something for everyone, I think, because it's got the ridiculous amounts of gore when it needs it. It's got stupid humor when it needs it. I will say, I think Bubba the Redneck Werewolf was probably funnier, but Wolf Cop still has that going for it. And the werewolf is just a werewolf. It is just a monster. The stuff that it's trying to say amidst all the stupidness is more what's going on around it, because you have like the decrepit small town and all the things going on in the background there with like all the corruption, and you know, the lead character is a barely functioning alcoholic, and that's not, they don't use lycanthropy to represent that in any way. It's just something that's happening on the side. Plus, I've never known any other film to get the hashtag Wolfcock transformation running. When I first saw them use his cock in a transformation, I was like, what did I just watch? and it got a sequel as well, another Wolf Cop, which was also great fun. Much more of the same, and just kind of push some of the same themes a little bit more. So one that I think is definitely worth checking out.
Yes, I really like the Wolf Cop movies.
Got to get around to watching that.
Jonathan,
you'll like it, Sam.
Jonathan, you may be the hairiest of us all. So, you have a favorite werewolf flick?
Can you guys hear me? Okay. First off, I'm having all kinds of technical issues this evening.
You're a little jumpy.
Let me why don't you circle back to me? I'll see if I can do something about my technical difficulties.
Kind of sounds like a Skinny Puppy track from '89.
Oh, nice. I'll be back.
Cool.
Stone, you want to scream about some werewolves?
Well, I must confess that I don't know much about werewolf movies as Matt does. Although I'm now definitely interested in seeing that silent movie Wolf Blood from 1925.
It's public domain. You can find it on YouTube.
I'm looking forward to
less than an hour long, I think, as well. So well worth checking out. It's very of its time. You can see it's a 1920s thing, but it still works remarkably well for what it is.
Awesome. Well, I'll just throw out a couple of tidbits. I mean, when I think of werewolves, I think of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because it has one of my favorite lines in all of motion picture history when Larry Talbot says, "You do not understand. When the moon becomes full, I become a wolf." And Lou Costello says, "Yeah, so do you and about 100 other guys." I mean, look, that's one of my favorites. And look, I love Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. It's kind of dumb, but I like it. You know, I've seen The Howling. I've seen American Werewolf in London. I've seen a few other wolf movies. And yet, if I was going to bring up one just bad one, and I'm kind of cheating a little bit, I admit, it's not really a wolf movie, but it's such a ripoff of the Wolfman down to the, and Dan will know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention the Bat People, because it's just about a guy on his honeymoon in the Colorado mountains. He gets bitten by a bat and he becomes a bat at night. The only reason to watch that movie is to watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, It Lives by Night, because there's this hilarious sequence where he's in a jacuzzi. And apparently when he ingests the alcohol after midnight, you know, the wolf part of him or the bat part of him hates it so much, and he has like this attack. And one of the robots says, "Oh, Bailey's and pickle juice. Oh, I'm having sex." Look, I need to watch more werewolf movies. Give me all your recommendations. I'll watch Wolf Blood. I'll watch Silver Bullet. Whatever you want to recommend to me. I got to admit that my werewolf film viewing needs to be expanded. So.
There are plenty I can recommend.
You'll be the first one, sir. Please. I'll start with Wolf Blood, and I will start with because I love silent movies. So,
Sam?
Well, I finally got around to a movie that was recommended to me like fucking 6 years ago by my friend Austin, who was a previous guest on Sheebie Jeebies, like way back in the day. But he recommended Bad Moon from 1996. With Michael Paré and Mariel Hemingway. So, and it's kind of more like werewolf family drama. And I haven't read the novel that it's based on, but I did quite enjoy it. So in case you guys actually haven't seen it. So it's about this guy named Ted. And he's like a photojournalist, and he ends up getting attacked by a werewolf somewhere. I don't know where he's at. But it's a violent encounter with this werewolf who also gets his girlfriend too, which is a shame because she's smoking hot. So he blows the thing's head off with a shotgun. Sorry, it's in the first 10 minutes. I'm not going to spoil the whole movie, I promise. And it's fucking wild. Like, the special effects are on point. This whole opening scene is hella violent. And the effects are done by Steve Johnson, so it's like, no wonder they look so good. So anyway, he ends up moving back to the States, and then, he's staying in this trailer. It is like just on the property that his sister and his nephew live on. And it's kind of just like a very like slow burn thing, because even though he's killed the werewolf that attacked him and killed his girlfriend, right? He's still a fucking werewolf. So then it's kind of like this balance to deal with his burgeoning lycanthropy, but also to still maintain his humanity, and then also have to deal with like family dynamics.
And plus, of course, it also has a full-on werewolf versus dog fight scene.
Exactly. Dude, like the fucking dog gets yeeted into the light. I was like, holy shit. I swear, like, this fucking werewolf was back to choke slam this little kid. It was amazing. So, I mean, like, it's definitely kind of like, if you don't want something that's going to be too wild of a ride, you just want something to, like, kick back on a Sunday afternoon, but you still want werewolves, it's a really good choice.
It is.
I'm sorry, I'm very muted. Dan, do you have something surprising for us?
Well, it might be for some, but I'm going to give a condensed version of this because I know it would take too long to go too deep, but I wanted to talk about, to me, arguably the definitive werewolf, Waldemar Daninsky, played by Jacinto Molina, more commonly known as Paul Naschy. So Paul Naschy was the Spanish Lon Chaney. And what I think is fascinating about him, and I highly recommend you read his biography, Memoirs of a Wolfman. He is somebody who legitimately loved the genre since he was young. He was a child of war. Literally, I delve deeper in that, but it would take too long. But I mean, he thought his father was dead for years before he just showed up at his front door. And he's somebody that fell in love very early on when he was taken to see Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman by his mom. And he really became one of us, that this is a guy who had a dream and somehow, some way he made it come true. He played the Waldemar character 12 times officially, and then there's 2 more movies that some people connect to the Daninsky films, and it all began in 1968 with Mark of the Wolfman, also more commonly Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. And despite neither the Doctor or his monstrous abomination being in that movie, that's another very funny story with Sam Sherman, who promised distributors a movie called Blood of Frankenstein, but couldn't deliver it on time. And so there's a very vague animated sequence to sort of tie it to some kind of an actual Frankenstein story. It's that movie did end up getting made much later by Al, well, not too much later, a few years later by Al Adamson. But Paul Naschy is somebody that I think gets overlooked. I mean, we talk about the Universal monsters, and rightfully so. I mean, that's where horror began for a lot of us. But Paul Naschy is somebody who has played it all. He has been Mr. Hyde. He has been the Mummy. He has played every iconic horror role. And I still find a lot of people that don't know who he is. And I think that's kind of a shame, because there's just so much to dive into there. I would argue most of his movies are entertaining. And in the Waldemar Daninsky films, it gets pretty crazy. At one point in Assignment Terror, there are aliens involved. You don't see that too often in a werewolf movie. Arguably, if not the best, one of the top two is a film called The Werewolf and the Vampire Woman, which I'll talk about a little bit. This is also known as Werewolf Shadow, and this just got this beautiful 4K from Vinegar Syndrome, and widely considered to be the best of the bunch. And in this one, he tangles with Countess Wandessa. It's a beautiful gothic horror film. And Naschy was somebody who initially was not even going to play this role, because Waldemar Daninsky is kind of an odd name for a Spanish actor. And this was because of the Franco regime. At the time, they wouldn't let a Spanish person play a supernatural character like that, because I don't know, you'd have to dive deeper into the culture for that. But at the time, it had to be a foreigner, a foreign character playing the role. So he's a Polish vampire, I guess, despite not looking anything like it. And in this movie, I just think it's horribly overlooked. The quality dips in the Daninsky series as we get to the end. It's softcore porn with the last one in 2014. But I really think it hits its height here. This is perfect for a Halloween night. I think it's up there. Like I said, arguably at least top two. And the Vinegar Syndrome restoration of the 4K looks excellent. I will say, try not to watch it on YouTube, because it looks really shitty in some of the versions up there. I do think this 4K is worth picking up. I know it's been on sale more than a few times, but just it's a really wild series to jump into. Elizabeth Bathory pops up at one point in the franchise, and I don't know what it is about Paul Naschy that really connected with me, but just in general, just that Leon Klimovsky relationship, they just hammered out some really awesome films, and I would recommend diving into this. For more specifics, I know I'm a little scatterbrained on this because there's just so much. We'll probably do it on Dead End Drive-In, but that is my avatar for those who have asked. And I will say, if you watch Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman, my recommendation is take it as a sequel to Mark of the Wolfman or Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, and not Fury of the Wolfman. It could kind of be either. That's the best way to watch it. Watch Mark, or again, Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, however you find it, and then this. And it's a great night at the movies if you love gothic horror and werewolves.
So, fun little bit of trivia for you then with him as well. Paul Naschy's Las Noches de Hombre Lobo from 1968 is one of the 5 werewolf movies that are considered lost.
Yeah, I was going to say the second film. Yeah, he looked for it apparently, but nobody ever saw it. So yeah, unfortunately,
it's also the only lost werewolf movie from after 1932. So.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad. But yeah, the second one really wasn't the second one. So I would love to see it though, because I bet it was pretty good. I've heard different things about it over the years. Apparently, he was looking for it after he died. So, or right before he died.
I say after he died.
After he died would be impressive, but yeah.
The sad thing is he found it, but then he couldn't give it to us. He
couldn't give it to us.
Fury of the Wolfman was the first that I saw because my local video store was the only one they had, and it was a cut box in a clamshell with that. The face was the poster art for it because they didn't use the original poster, and the font was one of those kind of like cut and paste job where they were trying to make it look like the letters were had been like sliced and put back together.
Yeah.
I did not know its country of origin, and back then I didn't care. I rented it, and there was this whole thing with European horror that wasn't necessarily Italian or English, right? The Spanish productions and the Greek productions, whereas you couldn't really figure out as a kid what was wrong, but something was desperately wrong about everything. Because as a kid, culturally, the dubs were weird, the choices were just bizarre sometimes. As an adult, you get it. You can put yourself in a different culture pretty easily, but as a kid, you couldn't.
Yeah.
I think I was off put for like the first 2 years of renting things and finding, oh my God, it's something. But then that's all I wanted to see after those 2 years, though.
Did you find Nashi unique? Because initially it was supposed to be Lon Chaney Jr. He was the writer of Mark of the Wolfman.
Yeah.
But they wanted Lon Chaney Jr. and he stepped in because he passed.
So I think people know that as much as I'm a classic Monsters fan, a huge Universal fan, I'm not a fan of Lon Chaney Jr. I just don't think he brings much to any of the roles. I think he's flat. I think he's kind of bumbling, which is not what the heroes of these things need to be. And I'm sorry, the Wolfman is the least sympathetic of all the Universal horror monsters to me. You know why? Because he spends the whole time telling you that he's sympathetic. It's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so horror. I don't want to hurt. Okay, whatever. The Gill Man.
Nice guy.
Oh my God, you're so nice. The Gill Man is more sympathetic, and he clearly wants to rape. Okay.
No.
Well, yeah, Wolfman is my least favorite Universal.
Absolutely. But so Nashi is interesting because Nashi's Vladimir is not necessarily a good guy. Like that character through the movies is pretty inconsistent as he does what the plot needs him to do. But it's there's some pretty villainous shit that's there, and I'm not talking about in the fur. I'm talking in the flesh.
Yeah, it depends. Like I said, if you watch them all, a lot of them conflict with each other, and it gets quite different by the time you get to Tomb of the Werewolf or the Unliving. That's something very different, but it's still worth the ride. I think at its height, and it amazes me how much Nashi was able to do, because you look at him and he's not going to be your typical, lead for this sort of thing. And I mean, he got to play everything, literally just about everything. And this Halloween, I highly recommend, please go watch some Nashi films, not even just the werewolf stuff. I mean, there's so much more to it than just that. And a lot of them are on Blu-ray now. So, yeah.
So because I'm going to be completely shameless, there you go, guys. You talk about it in the chat anyway.
Snorl?
This edition is out of print, but it is currently in print if you want to buy it. Amazon, it is cheap. Just go buy it. You talk about it anyway. Jonathan, Werewolves. Bark at the moon, man.
I think, am I good now?
Yeah, you sound
You're
good.
good.
Cool.
Yes. Good.
All right. Anybody talk about ginger snaps? Because that's my favorite word.
It was name checked, but no one's discussed.
Okay, yeah. I saw that when I was probably about 13 or 14. And even though that movie is about a girl going through puberty, I mean, there's still a lot that resonates there for a guy too. I'm trying to think of like how to express myself on this movie. The werewolf is very secondary to it. And you don't even, I mean, I think at the end of the movie, we get like maybe a couple of minutes of screen time with a naked werewolf, which is odd. But Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not really well prepared. I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off this evening. So
Ginger Snaps is a great pick.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I remember just renting that with zero expectations. I just expected schlock. I mean, this isn't too far removed from the era of like Werewolf, the Richard Lynch film, which is not very good.
No.
And I took that home and I was like, holy shit. I got a lot more than I was expecting out of that movie.
I was tickled by the name more than I was like, oh, her name's Ginger. It's Ginger Snaps. I get it.
Also fits in with our previous talk about trilogies because that's one of those
shit trilogies.
Few franchises that stayed a trilogy. We have not had a Ginger Snaps requel, and I'm actually quite surprised.
But those, does anybody like the sequels?
I liked the prequel, the third installment, and I hated fucking prequels up until that point.
It's better than the second one. I think.
It is.
It's such an odd like choice though to be like, well, the Fitzgerald sisters, but in like 1840.
Yeah.
I don't know why that worked, but it did.
Has anyone else noticed that the second Ginger Snap film is remarkably similar to Critters 3 in plot structure? I'm dead serious.
No, I can see what you're saying. I never really thought of it.
Good. Check it out. I won't go into elaborate, but just check it out. It's like shockingly.
It's been years since I've seen the second movie. All I remember is the sister
Emily
in an asylum, right?
Yeah.
And not much werewolfing happens.
There might be more werewolfing actually, but it's just dumb.
Yeah. I'm shocked because Ginger Snaps screams shitty Blumhouse remake to me. Like, I don't know where
I think it's still very underground-ish, right? Like, it's not. It's big amongst the horror community. It's like it's a given amongst the horror community, but I don't think it's permeated that next tier.
I mean, if you look up greatest werewolf films, you will almost always see that somewhere.
Did we keep the embargo with not mentioning The Howling and fucking American?
We did.
Until you just fucking blew it.
No, fuck them. I'm saying it because fuck them. They're fine. But God, watch another fucking werewolf movie.
Exactly.
I find all of the different representations of like boxes that women have to fit into are pretty well represented throughout Ginger Snaps too. I mean, Ginger Snaps, TOO, not Ginger Snaps 2. Like their mother, who's very much like kind of like the Susie Homemaker type, and then even God, I can't even remember the name of the villain in that now. This is gonna drive me crazy. Not the damn it.
Who was the villain in that? Like the shit, like the shithead kid or
the shithead boyfriend?
Gosh, hold on. That bitchy girl in Ginger Snaps. I can't think of the name.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I'm calling her the villain because it's not really.
Yeah, there's not really a villain in that movie.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very much the werewolf thing is that the villain is, the other side of us, right? So.
Yeah, but you've got the bitchy girl, and then it's like wasn't the counselor or the nurse pregnant? I have a vague recollection of that.
She kills the nurse, right?
I think so. See, now I need to do a rewatch of that. It's been too long.
I do need to watch it again.
I watch regularly.
I'm down to revisit those.
Yeah. I also want to honorable mention Last Phases. No one ever talks about that one. That's a decent little werewolf.
Blind veteran versus werewolf.
Yeah.
Nick D'Amici is so good in that.
Howl, Werewolf on a Train.
Yeah, with shitty British stereotype people that you want to die.
I like it. I like it though. It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, it is.
Bloody hell.
Bloody hell. Sorry.
What's that, governor?
Chip, cheerio. Sorry.
I just quickly, if you like classic horror, Undying Monster is my favorite of werewolf film of the classic era. Film people don't talk about much. There's a beautiful cleaned up print on Blu-ray. There's no excuse not to enjoy the film. it really, really, really works and deserves your attention. I love if it's 70s exploitation cinema is your thing. The Beast Must Die is about as good as it gets. It is a wild friggin' movie that earns its exploitation stripes in every possible way, not in just the horror genre, in every way. It's beautiful. In fact, I'm mentioning Marvel a lot tonight, and that's weird. But did anyone else notice that they did that Werewolf by Night short film, and it was just Beast Must Die, and like
I really enjoyed that. It's probably the last Marvel thing I liked.
It was fine. It was fine. I haven't gone back to it, but
I like Man Thing though. That was what I was geeking out about.
Yeah. But I would say the funniest thing is about the werewolf thing on film is, really, to me, we still haven't gotten the definitive werewolf film in the way that vampire-wise, you can make your choice, but like Lugosi's Dracula is pretty definitive as what a vampire film is. Maybe we'll see what Eggers does this year, but I think it's werewolves are still, we don't have that glistening perfect example yet.
We have elements of it spread over different films. I think,
I would say The Cursed from just a couple years ago was approached it, and I don't say that lightly, but I think that film is really, really, really good, and I love the fact that it blends a bunch of different werewolf traditions as well as establishing its own. So I think that film probably deserves to be reevaluated and not forgotten, which it seems to be like no one's talking about it now, even though it was a theatrical release just a couple years back. Maybe the COVID era thing, just coming out of COVID, hurt it a bit. But I'm hopeful that in the future, I'm going to keep this as vague and non-specific as humanly possible. I'm hoping in the future maybe we could get a movie in the werewolf genre that would do us proud, or at least make me happy.
Really?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of trivia then for you. See if any of you know the answer to this one. Which decade released saw the most werewolf movies released?
1980s.
2010s.
No.
40s.
What did you say?
I said 40s.
I agree. 2010s. I think
it was the 2010s. There was a little over 40 films released in the 2010s.
Yeah, there's a lot of really low budget stuff in there, but
a little bit unfair because distribution opened up to the masses in 2011. Basically, streaming services went out of control to get as much product as possible. So we don't know how much shit was shot on Super 8 back in the day, but today's, like in the 60s, a bunch of kids could have made of something feature length on 8mm that had no way to be released. But today that would get a release onto streaming.
And I think it's also the era where we started to see the trend of people using the same stock art on all the posters and DVD covers, even though it looks nothing like the fucking werewolf in the movie.
Yeah. I would say that we actually got to the point where there was a majority of werewolf movies that didn't have werewolves actually in the film, but they were just always insinuated. Quick blurry shots of something furry.
I mean, that can still work, though. I mean, there was no obviously spoilers here, but there was no actual werewolf in The Wolf of Snow Hollow, but it's still a really good werewolf movie. Or to go all the way back, She-Wolf of London as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, Matt, I just want to pick your brain since you're the werewolf guy. So, Werewolf of London versus Wolfman. You know where I stand on this, obviously, out of context.
I am going to say Werewolf of London because that was the first bipedal werewolf movie. So to me, that is a lot more culturally significant. Same as I would put Curse of the Werewolf above Wolfman as well, the first color werewolf movie, and in my opinion, a much better version of that story. So,
and why do you think Hammer never nailed it?
Well, I mean, that was Hammer, wasn't it? Curse of the Werewolf.
Which one? Yeah.
Well, there's but it is. But I mean, I don't know. I look at like they reinvented the Frankenstein franchise into something much different, but equally valuable to me. Their Dracula films as a series are more impactful than Universal's, but they just, I mean, outside that, where's the werewolf films from Hammer?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a hammer, but there was one that was released a couple of years back called Wolf Manor, and I thought that felt kind of like it could have been a hammer. So, you know, other people are carrying the torch for them.
I just always thought that was the weird omission.
Yeah.
They did more mummy movies than they did werewolf movies.
I think they wanted to go further on Curse of the Werewolf than they did as well, but they were told, no, you can't do that. So,
all right, guys, we are coming. I just hit 2 hours. We had actually identified more topics, so I'm going to leave this up to you. Do you guys want to do one more, or do you want to call it a night and bump these to next time? People in the chat can also scream at us.
I'm gonna vote for next time, just because like then we have time to like really talk about everything and develop ideas.
I would agree, only because I don't want to rush this. So
Yeah.
And
there's going to be a rabbit hole between you and I on that.
Yeah.
I condensed like 6 hours worth of Paul Naschy stuff, so I don't want to do that with that one.
All right. Well then, guys, thank you for watching. There's a lot of content coming onto the channel over the next few weeks. We did have a little bit of a break there when my power was out because storms in Jersey, so everything kind of got pushed back. But I think just about. I know, Stone, you are recording something tomorrow, I think, for me, aren't you?
Monday morning.
Monday morning.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a audio commentary on the movie Doc Hollywood. So once I finish that up, then I'll do my video. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Dan already has things in the can that I just have to release, but I can't make it the Dan channel, so we have to spread those out. Matt, what's next up in the Curios?
I'm planning to do it's not entirely horror, but it was certainly influenced by horror. Sapphire and Steel.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
actually, I just, you know what? I was just sent a file of that.
That's
so crazy that you mentioned that. Sam, what's next on the Sheebies? Not or very Jeebies?
One of those.
One of them.
So, no, next one is another Sheebie Jeebies episode, and it's going to be Ghostbusters Answer the Call from 2016, which Jonathan will be on with me and Tall Chris. And that was a very fun time. So I'm going to try to get around to editing that either tomorrow or Sunday. So hopefully.
Even if you don't like the movie, we do very little talking about it. So
great
time. And I am right now I am working on my Game Over Autopsy, as well as doing a bunch of short videos called Notes from the Margins, which are little discussions running somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes a pop about elements of horror that sometimes get overlooked, but are not worthy of a really long conversation. So these are like bite-sized morsels of kind of under the hood stuff that wouldn't fit into any specific autopsy well. I will note that in the store, which you should be able to find a link for easily, you can find show shirts for almost every show on the channel. And we do have some new shows premiering in the next month or so, which we're going to leave under the covers for right now until I have them in my greedy little hands. But they need to. I think so. One of them is being spoiled in the chat as we speak. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. So, guys, any final words?
Yes. Just to let everybody know, the Criterion sale is still going on. It just came out a couple weeks ago. I'm very happy to own the Wachowski Sisters Bound on Blu-ray, which has some pretty epic lesbian scenes between Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon as they try to steal money from Joey Pants. So, yeah, check out Bound. It's awesome.
It's hard to follow that with absolute anything.
Oh, remember to spay and neuter your pets.
Yes!
Guys, we finally beat Medicare.
Internal log 0613-2024. The ship is a twisted mass of wreckage on the surface of an unmapped moon outside the boundaries of any charted system. The crew are dead. With any luck, this transmission will be picked up by the YouTube algorithm. and notifications will be sent, but who knows? This is customer service specialist Sam, last survivor of the commercial data mining ship Imperium. Signing off. Good night.
The Visited by Voices Network is a consortium of content creators who explore genre art. Our collective aim is to jumpstart conversations in the horror community by providing unique viewpoints. We come to film and books with all the baggage and experiences from our everyday lives, and this allows us to see works through our own independent light prisms. At VBV Network, we reject groupthink, consensus, and social standards in regards to what makes narrative arts work. You may not often agree with us, but there'll always be a respectful place for you to add your opinion to the mix.
Shoot that ball, and down comes that plane into the jungle.